Hello and thank you for joining us on the Capitol Report on NTD television. I'm your host, Steve Lance. Tonight, voters in Georgia, Texas, Alabama, and a few other states have to decide which candidates will be on the ballot come November. For Democrat voters, the question is largely on whether they prefer moderate candidates or candidates pushing for a more radical left agenda. For Republicans, we'll be looking at the support for Trump-endorsed candidates over the others. NTD's Melina Wisecup brings us the details on some of the key races to watch tonight.
Georgia voters headed to the polls today had decisions to make at all levels of government. The swing state could determine the fate of the U.S. Senate. Current Democrat Senator Raphael Warnock is up for re-election this November. Republican candidate Herschel Walker is leading in the polls, and if he takes the primary as expected, will face Warnock. This is one race that has the potential to flip the Senate's majority. And at the state level, Georgia's Governor Brian Kemp is facing Republican Trump-backed challenger, former Senator David Perdue.
And Trump's influence on David Perdue in his election and his campaign has helped a great deal.
But I will vote for Kemp.
Former Senator Perdue was lagging behind Kemp in a previous Fox poll, but the result will show how much sway former President Trump has on voters in the purple state. The Republican victor will face Democrat Stacey Abrams in the final election.
Our responsibility is to see the needs of every Georgian.
The state also has tough choices for the House. Redistricting has left 2 Democrat representatives competing for 1 seat. Representatives Carolyn Bourdeaux and Lucy Macbeth have similar voting records, but Bourdeaux has a closer relationship with the party's moderate group on the Hill. So far, there's been a record voter turnout for the state, despite Democrats' accusations that the new voting law would create voter suppression. As for Texas, Democrat Congressman Cuellar is facing a runoff against progressive Jessica Cisneros. Cuellar has been tough on the Biden administration to get the border crisis under control, and the Democrat is pro-life. This contrasts with Cisneros, who has been endorsed by Socialist Democrat Bernie Sanders and other progressives.
Last time we were almost 3 percentage points away from defeating him, so we came back to finish the job.
And in Alabama, there's a race for a Senate seat. Congressman Mo Brooks, who recently lost Trump's endorsement, is challenged by Katie Britt, whom Trump has spoken positively of. Democrats right now hold a very narrow majority in Congress. If just 1 seat is flipped in the Senate, Republicans could take control of the chamber. And over on the House side, there's a very slim margin between the 2 parties. So this November, we should be watching battleground states like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona. The outcome of these elections are crucial because they will determine if Democrats can continue to push President Biden's agenda through Congress, or if Republicans will have the ability to put a check on the president. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
Pennsylvania is still tallying up votes to determine which GOP candidate will be on the ballot in November. Trump-backed Dr. Oz has a slight edge over David McCormick. We'll likely see a recount and now a court case. McCormick filed a lawsuit to urge the state to count in mail-in ballots that were not marked with a date. And this suit is already facing pushback from the Republican National Committee. The committee states that they absolutely object to the counting of undated mail-in ballots. With the votes still not tallied in Pennsylvania and a key primary in Georgia being tallied tonight, here with us to discuss is former Virginia Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli, who is now the chairman of the Election Transparency Initiative, and we're happy to have him on. Ken Cuccinelli, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
My pleasure.
Ken, we're a week since the Pennsylvania primaries and still don't have a decision on the winner of the Republican primary between Dr. Oz and David McCormick. Depending on who I listen to, this is normal and all part of the process. And others say there's no reason why we can't have a clear answer on election night. What's your take?
Well, I think the real answer is right in between. This is not normal. Let's not kid ourselves to be sitting and waiting for this. And one of the reforms at the Election Transparency Initiative that we strongly champion is closing out the acceptance of mail-in ballots. You set a time, and of course, mail-in ballots have been very controversial in Pennsylvania, and that continues with this race with the federal judge ruling that they have to count undated ballots. So this is something we confronted in my home state of Virginia, and the correct side won. And now we're seeing it play out in Pennsylvania. Now, having said all that, If you go all the way back to Bush v. Gore in 2000, Florida was humiliated. Their system looked really embarrassing. And what do? They spent years, year after year, passing legislation to reform their system, 3, 4, 5 years, and firing some people who needed to be fired. And you fast forward to 2020, largest swing state, third largest state in the country, and they were done counting on election night. It can be done. It was done without complaints from either side in a very difficult year, 2020, in terms of election processes. So this can be done, but it hasn't been done in Pennsylvania. And the primary block in Pennsylvania is Governor Wolf. He was presented with comprehensive election reform, and he vetoed it, gave a press conference, didn't even know what was in the bill. Really didn't even know. And that was sad. It was pathetic. And hopefully we will see that be a center point of the governor's race, not just in Pennsylvania, but the same thing happened in Michigan and Wisconsin as well. So we'll see if this year's elections help fix that problem.
Ken, does dragging out the results of an election just beyond election night, just from the perspective of common sense, make the election more susceptible to fraud?
It does. And it also, every day that goes by, everything may be working what I'll call normally with respect to the rules of Pennsylvania. But for everybody watching who don't know those rules and are never going to know them, every day that goes by with just more question marks undermines their confidence in the outcome of the race. And the Election Transparency Initiative, we measure success by, can the losing side feel confident in the outcome? And when you see a system like this, look, whether it's Oz or McCormick, whoever comes out on the bottom of this is not going to walk away feeling like, gee, everything ran clean and smooth and we were treated fairly. And that is not good for our democratic republic. It's just not. It's these elections are our cornerstone of our whole society, how we govern ourselves. And to have this lack of confidence in these, for Pennsylvania, 1930s era voting laws is really unacceptable.
Ken, we have another big primary in the state of Georgia today.
Yeah.
Georgia's been at the center of the discussion, having passed their own election reforms. Are you satisfied with what Georgia has done? What do you like about it? And is there anything that's been left out that you would like to see on the table?
So great question. Remember what I said about Florida after Bush v. Gore. They went for years reforming their elections. And Georgia has got to start in that direction. And I am impressed with the start they've made. But they have years more work to do to clean up their systems. They've tightened up Zuckerbucks, for instance, but they haven't banned them. They should be banned entirely. There's no reason private money should flow basically to the referee, if you think of it like sports, of an election. That can only be gamed. And it also undermines confidence in the outcome. Just to use one example, shortening the early voting period is important because, for the reasons you cite, not because it's inherently bad to vote early, although if you make it early enough, it becomes a problem, but that security and oversight and transparency that are the foundational elements of confidence in the outcome of the election are very difficult to maintain and to achieve the more early days you have. So they didn't really shorten that in Georgia. It was one of the more sensitive points. But we should point out, as long as we're talking about things they didn't do, look at what the other side said about the reforms they have done. Oh, it's voter suppression, et cetera. And we've seen a huge turnout on both sides of the aisle, bigger than 2018 in Georgia. So the radical left, including Stacey Abrams, who was attacking this whole effort as voter suppression, has been proved convincingly wrong.
Ken Cuccinelli, thank you.
Good to be with you.
The leak of the Supreme Court draft opinion sparked a heated debate on abortion nationwide. The information on the leaker is still unknown after weeks since the leak has come out. But now we're learning about the person who's on the mission to find the leaker. Gail Curley is the Marshal of the U.S. Supreme Court. Curley began to serve as the marshal less than a year ago. Prior to that, she was a former Army colonel and military lawyer. Earlier this month, she was tasked to investigate the unprecedented case of the leak of a draft opinion on overturning Roe v. Wade. Some experts say leaking the draft opinion is unlikely to be a crime, and Curley's tools are limited. She could theoretically hire an outside law firm or call in the FBI to assist, but it's unclear if subpoenas can be issued to the journalist or the staff at the High Court. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.